Hi, Andrew. Welcome to the South African TA Association member interview. Thanks so much for volunteering.
Christine.
So we're both, pardon?
I was going to say, I think it's been like a long time coming. I think I've been weaseling my way out of it and thought that's about time.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, as secretary of the, on the executive committee, I think it's a great opportunity for members who don't know you so well to get to know you a little bit better. So yeah, let's get into it. So with that in mind, why don't you give us a bit of an introduction? Who are you? How do you fit into the world? Tell us a bit about yourself.
Cool. Yeah, so I'm Andrew Matthews. I'm a coach and a coach supervisor, and I also do mentor coaching for people on coach training and who are looking to credential with ICF. I'm based in Pretoria and float between Johannesburg and Pretoria, and occasionally down to the Cape and sometimes the UK. Yeah, when I'm not working, I quite like exercise. So I've done triathlon in the past, haven't been entering any races recently, especially with global pandemic happening. But otherwise, really enjoy getting out either on my bicycle or swimming or running. And that's some of it does multiple things. It helps me release tension, but I also do some of my more skillful thinking while I'm out getting fresh air and exhausting myself.
Funny how that always works. Yeah. Bit of fresh air and suddenly our thinking just changes completely.
Yeah, completely.
Okay, cool. So yeah, I mean, I've known you quite a while. In fact, you were part of the beginning of my journey, becoming a coach. You were a mentor coach, my coach training that I did with Karen through coaching development. So yeah, I've known you for a number of years now. You've already shared with us a very basic overview of what you do. But do you want to maybe go into any more detail around the work that you do? Like, who do you typically work with, or how do you help them, or anything to that effect?
Yeah. So when I think of the golden thread across the different hats that I wear, so coaching, coach supervision, or as a mentor, the thing that I really love is helping people find their personal flavor and how they can live into it and make it a reality for themselves. So, and that takes different shapes or forms and when I'm wearing different hats. But that seems to be the nub of the matter. So often when there's something that shows up as quite superficial or on a transactional level, always looking for what's underneath this, what's the missing ingredients, and taking it a bit deeper and trying to find out how that. So as you can hear, I like to play around with food, so it's an easy go-to metaphor for me. So what's the missing ingredient, or what's the little bit of lemon juice at the end to help the dish come together? And I think that's the golden thread of the different practices that I have.
I really love that, because it makes the assumption that things are working in some way, and it's just that missing added sprinkle of parmesan or whatever the case is that's going to, yeah, like you said, bring it together. Really like
yeah, absolutely. I think so often people don't realize that they hold the answer that they need, and there's just something that's an unknown block, and when they figure that out, it's realizing, oh, I already had the slice of lemon in the fridge, I just need to pull it out now.
Yeah, brilliant. And so how does TA come into that?
Yeah, so TA is interesting, and so I might speak about it in from how I first met it, because that's really the fundamentals of it. So my original coach training is the same as your original coach training, and there was a lot of transactional analysis woven into that. So that was my first taster, which was in 2012. And then very soon after that, hopped onto the TA specific bandwagon. So I did TA 101 with Karen Pratt, and a couple of her other workshops. So she also ran a TA toolkit for coaches. So it very easily became a collection of frameworks and lenses and different language to help make sense of what was happening. And primarily at that point, it was make sense of what's happening for me as I was becoming a coach. So this thing of that you don't do coaching, you become a coach, and your first client is yourself. So using the TA language as a way of self-development was my first meeting with it. And then as I got to know myself better, being able to use those frameworks as the language or the metaphors, I suppose this is fundamental, is that all of these things are just metaphors to help you make sense of things. And then I felt a bit more enabled to be able to use it in my work. So for a large amount of my work, it's happening sort of underneath the surface. So it's the lenses or the filters that I'm listening and watching and being present with my clients. So kind of making sense of it, and then using them as triggers of how to be curious with my clients. So for the vast majority of the times, I won't be asking them specific language around TA. It'll be rather a trigger of what's the language that we co-created together. However, as I get to work with coaches in training who are also exposed to TA language, it's very easy to then pick that up as the shorthand and be able to ask questions through that and kind of cut through to get to the nub a bit quicker. And then as a supervisor, where it's far more explicit, where you'll use some kind of model, framework, or a metaphor to help gain that distance. And transactional analysis is a really, really great network of metaphors to help create that distance, and from that distance get the insight to then bring back into that coach's practice.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we've said this before, but it almost feels like our own secret language.
Yeah.
And it's so exciting when you meet someone who speaks the same language, and it's like you don't have to explain, you just know.
Yeah. And it's funny because you can almost catch it. You say, that sounds familiar. And you're like, so when you say that, do you mean this? And they go, you also know this. It's like kindred spirits.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. And so what is your TA journey looking like? So you said you did your 101 after you did your coach training and plus a few other workshops that Karen was running. What's the rest of the path look like?
Yeah.
And where's it going?
Yeah. So this, I quite like getting into pathways to get to some kind of certification. So then from an early onset, learning that transactional analysis does also have this. So getting the CTA and then continuing into the TSTA as the ultimate endpoint. So my first sort of focused step into getting into that pathway was to engage with again with Karen Pratt on one of her year-long learning groups, and I know you and I started in that together. So that was the TA in education year, and that was a wonderful experience because it was online, so it was loads of people in the beginning, all from around the world, and with different levels of experience of transaction analysis. And obviously our training at that time was specifically under the umbrella of education. and there was a lot of people that came in from other parts of TA, more specifically from psychotherapy. So it was great to be in this sort of melting pot of different cultures and also different levels of exposure and expertise around TA. And towards the end of that year, or during that year, I kept feeling like there was something that I was not quite getting, something that I was missing. And then with conversation with Karen, realized I maybe had taken too big a step. And the recommendation was to join a foundation year. So going from TA 101 as the official front door to transactional analysis, the natural progression is to then engage in a foundation year. So going deeper with the learning group. So my second year then was shifted into a foundation year, and you and I did that together. And it was just like, like that. I keep referring to this, the game of Tetris, but I haven't played Tetris in like maybe 20 odd years. So maybe it's more like playing like Candy Crush or something like that, when all of a sudden all of like the blocks or the things line up, and then it goes ta-da, and then like things fall into place again. That's what happened for me in that foundation year. I really felt like, okay, these are the missing pieces. So that was 2 years of foundation, and then stepping back into the education focus realm again. So now I think counting this year, I think this is the 5th year of an online, it's either 4th or 5th year of continuing online training. So obviously the vast majority of that's been as education, and I feel like I'm at this fork in the road of wanting to sign something official to engage in a training contract to go towards CTA, but I've still got this big question mark about going into organizational development. So I'm not yet committing into a learning contract because I want to find more exposure in OD to get a bit more awareness of which direction do I want to take in this in certifying.
Do you do much work in organizations?
It's not specifically at the moment. There was times in the past where I was doing significant amounts of work in organizations. And my desire is to be able to work more closely with impacting the corporate culture to be, if you think of when people have a full-time or fully employed or full-time employed, a significant portion of their time is based on working in a company. So if we can positively impact a corporate culture that enables somebody, the ripple effects can be significant from that point. So that's the stuff that really gets me fired up, and that's my key flame at the moment of really still being curious about OD. And so if I still find that when I get more exposure in OD, then that's probably going to be the deciding factor. But at this point, it's still a bit of like, there's so many unknowns. So I've taken my foot off the accelerator and happily experiencing the view at this point.
Yeah, it feels to me at least that the journey to CTA, never mind the next things after that, but even just the journey to CTA is such a long one that it's really, what the destination is more or less, but it's really about the actual journey and learning as much as you can and absorbing. And yeah, so I like what you said, taking the foot off the accelerator and just seeing where it goes.
Yeah, and I think this is also why I've felt such a close kinship with TA, and to pick up what I said earlier about you don't just learn to do coaching, you become a coach, and that focus of the first couple of years of transaction analysis is learning about you to then be able to use it elsewhere. So it's not just trying to give you a toolkit hammers and now everything starts to look like a nail. It's realizing actually this is how I use these tools because it's been so significant in my journey.
Yeah, really integrate what you're learning.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to put you on the spot with this next question. But if you were told you could only ever share one model from TA going forward for the rest of your life, what model would you share?
Okay, so there was a deep-seated inner voice that shouted while you were finishing the question, and trying to do a little flick through my folders of info, and I keep coming back to what this inner voice is shouting, and that's the drama triangle. The drama triangle has been one of the most significant insight creating mechanisms for myself, and it's the one that it's like if I had this imaginary chalkboard, and when I'm doing my work and I'm keeping track of which models pop up in my head, I think that drama triangle would have the most little ticks next to it. Yeah, it's a drama triangle.
Yeah, I resonate with that. Okay, so you're on the Exco with South African TA Association. What does it mean to you to be involved in that way?
Yeah. So I also forget now how many years I've been that I volunteered with SATAA. And I think when I came into it, I didn't really know what I was getting into or what SATAA was about. And I'm really quite grateful that I still decided to get involved without having such a clear thing, because I really enjoyed my journey with SATAA. So it's, as we both know, it's a really small organization, and it has had its time of expanding and contracting. And it's felt like out of all of my organizations that I've been involved with, and I've been involved with quite a few where I've been as a volunteer, and I think that's an important characteristic, is SATAA seems to have had quite a stable ballast and almost an even keel. And there's something there that's been able to sail through really interesting times. If you look at the past, just short of a handful of years, we've gone through such interesting times in South Africa and globally. And SATAA, the Exco seems to be has been really responsive in looking authentically about how is it impacting, how are we digesting it as a leadership, and what's our responsibility and or opportunity to then bring awareness from a TA lens. And that's been really special. So I think there's a combination of things here. There's almost like a bit of a Goldilocks something happening here, of the size of the organization being quite dynamic, enabling the Exco to be really dynamic, and responsive, and not needing to be reactive in any shape or form. And I think that, even though we're small, when we get to be able to do that kind of thing, only good things can come from that. So even if our exposure, at least with our membership, is quite small, but it does seem like our newsletter exposure is quite a bit bigger. And when we started the community of practices in 2020, that was really testament to it. All of a sudden, there was 20 people on screen, and only 5 of them were members. So it was great to be able to see that we have that kind of reach. And even if we get a couple of eyes on our information that gets sent out, there's such a heartwarming opportunity there to be a positive impact on someone.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, all right. Well, thank you so much, Andrew, for giving us a glimpse into you and your work. Is there any last thing that you want to share before we finish off, or does that feel okay?
No, I think that's a good amount to share for now.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks so much, and yeah, chat to you soon.
Yeah. Thank you, Kirsty.